Anna Hoffman, and welcome to this episode of Data Exposed Live. We are super excited to have you all joining us here today from wherever you're streaming in from, whether it's Learn TV, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, or somewhere else. We are happy to have you here, and thank you so much for joining us for the show today. Just a quick reminder before we get into the show, I want to remind you all to do ask questions. We have subject matter experts standing by the whole show, and we can even potentially ask your question live and feature it on screen. So be sure to head over to Learn TV to ask those questions or ask questions from wherever it is you're streaming from. We can see them all. That's the magic of streaming. But anyways, today we have an exciting show planned. It's kind of unconventional from what we've done in the past. But yesterday, some of you may have tuned into the Azure Hybrid Digital event where we had some very high-level folks from Microsoft actually announcing some things related to Azure Arc, including the pre-announcement of the general availability, as well as the general availability for Azure Arc itself. So we thought in this episode it would be great to take a deeper look at what's going on with Azure Hybrid, how you can get started, what it's for, and for that, we actually have, it looks like we have Buck Woody from Contoso, not from Microsoft, from Contoso, but let me bring Buck up. Hey, Buck.
Hi. It's Anna, right?
Yes.
Listen, I was looking at the Azure Hybrid and Multi-Cloud Digital event the other day,
yes.
And I just had some questions, and there was a nice lady, Marisa, who said I could just talk to you about it. And so my questions for my company here at Contoso Health have to do with really two of these things that I heard about, and I want to just kind of ping some things off of you. I heard about the SQL Server. Let me check my notes here. SQL Server on Arc-enabled servers. Now that, as I understand it, is to bring my current SQL servers that I have on premises, and I want to bring that into Kubernetes. We use Kubernetes, and I want to catalog them up in Microsoft Azure for kind of a single asset view. But then the other thing I took a note on, a guy, Rohan Kumar, had a post there that said Azure Arc enabled SQL managed instance. Now, I know about SQL managed instance. It's kind of database as a service. I get control at the instance level.
Right.
And then you guys handle monitoring and HA and governance and some management just handled for me. Do I have those two? Do I have those two right?
Yeah, that's correct. So you have Azure Arc enabled SQL Server, which is kind of bringing some of the Azure capabilities like Azure Defender down into SQL Server, wherever you have it running. And then you also have Azure Arc enabled SQL managed instance, which is this idea to bring, like you said, like a PaaS or platform as a service type of capability to wherever you're running Kubernetes. So yeah, I think you have that right. We don't typically do kind of like customer Q&A on Data Exposed Live, but since you're here, might as well get your questions answered, and maybe some of our viewers have other questions they want answered, and we can get those answered as well.
Well, that's really nice. Yeah, I'm really interested in that Arc-enabled SQL managed instance in specific. As you can imagine, we have a lot of governance things that we're kind of interested in. So if you can answer those questions, that would be great. I apologize for crashing your show here, but it's really kind of something I need to know about.
Yeah, no, it's not an issue. I think a lot of people will actually be interested to learn more about Azure Arc and SQL Managed Instance running in Azure Arc. I'm actually going to bring up someone. You just hold on 1 second, Buck. Hey, Dhananjay.
Hey, Anna. How are you?
I am good. I have this customer on the other line, and he wants to learn more about Azure Arc. And I thought you might be like a great person to bring on and kind of help me help him, and we can all kind of learn together about what's going on with Azure Arc. But first, I was just wondering if you could, for our viewers, introduce yourself so we can see if you're like the right person.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm DJ Data, or my name is Dhananjay Mahajan. I'm a principal PM on the Arc-enabled data services team, and I love working with customers, helping them run their data services, SQL managed instance anywhere on any cloud that they want to run it on.
Awesome. Well, we are lucky to have you here, DJ Data, which we'll go for from this point on. But we're gonna bring back Buck on and let him ask some questions, and maybe you can help us learn.
Hi there, DJ. Very good to meet you. I think I've actually heard your name. I work at Contoso Healthcare Services. And I think you work with the engineering side, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so listen, I had a couple of questions. I'm in charge of our data estate here over in the healthcare area. And I have Azure, and I really like the things that it provides, but I don't have it everywhere. You know, I've got some systems that are kind of spread out a little bit and all that. I'd like to know more. I was asking Anna about this Arc-enabled data services. Can I run my Azure data services outside of Azure? Can you just explain it a little bit for me?
Absolutely, Buck. Yeah, I work with Contoso Engineering, and we've also been looking at your healthcare department and setting up your clinics so that they can run data everywhere using Azure Arc. So let me explain what Azure Arc is. Azure Arc is a set of technologies that allow you as a customer to run Azure services on any cloud of your preference that's running on Kubernetes. So with a single control plane, ability to run those Azure services like Security Insights and Azure Monitor on premises, including Azure Arc enabled data services, which I'm happy to help you with, and be able to run their cloud native applications as they modernize their applications, as they modernize their infrastructure anywhere. So as an example, let's, Anna, is it okay if I show Buck kind of the data center as well as the applications running in Azure outside of Azure and how you can view them in Azure?
Yeah, definitely. DJ Data, I think that would be great, not just for Buck, but for all our viewers who are kind of clamoring to understand how this works and what it looks like.
Yeah. So let's go straight into the demo because that's really how it works. So Buck, you're from Contoso Health.
That's right.
Contoso Health, we have actually set up your clinics in the East US with applications running in it.
That's
As
right.
patients come into your clinics, you have to manage their records, check them in, make sure their health records are available for the physicians. So that's an application that's running in the clinic. I don't have connectivity directly into the clinic. However, I can control everything from the Azure portal. So I'm going to give you a rundown of the clinic, how it works. As you can see, there's the AKS HCI. So each clinic has a HCI, a hyperconverged infrastructure, a mini cloud running on premises outside of Azure, but it's also running AKS on top of it. So you can get the same AKS Azure Kubernetes service running inside of the clinic. And now that you have Kubernetes running inside of the clinic, you can run your cloud native applications, the containerized applications. And here you can see DB Clinic. It's a SQL managed instance Azure Arc, which is running on the clinic, but I can control it all from here. And as your clinics get better and better in terms of the technology that they're using from the cloud, they will be able to bring in other services as well and be able to use those. So that's how the clinic has been set up.
Nice.
Today.
So it looks kind of interesting, and you've got all that in a single resource there. You're able to look at it. I'm real impressed with that. I mean, how complicated was this to set up? Because, we've got a small IT staff and we ask them to do a lot. That's one of the reasons we use Kubernetes, right? You can just describe what you want and it just sort of happens. But this looks kind of complicated. Was that kind of hard to set up, or was it easy? Or can you tell me more about how this came around?
Yeah. And just like Contoso, absolutely. It was very easy to set this up.
Okay.
We know that many of our customers may not have the expertise that's required that we have in Azure. So we are trying to simplify the entire experience for our customers like you. And it should be super simple for anybody in the clinic to set it up locally. But at the same time, you can set it up centrally and do some management and policy and governance, as well as billing centrally. So let me walk you through what I'm doing.
I gotta see it. I gotta see it. You gotta show me how you do this, because it sounds great, but I'd like to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've set up another resource group with all the resources that we are doing for your factory locations.
Right.
And in that, there is a Kubernetes cluster that has been set up.
Okay.
So it's really 4 simple steps. 1, set up a Kubernetes cluster.
Okay.
And prepare that infrastructure to run data services on top of it.
Okay.
Create on that cluster a custom location and put data services platform or what we call as a data controller on top of it.
Okay.
And that custom location now ends up looking as if it's an extension of Azure in your own environment.
Okay.
Number 3, now that you have set up the data controller, you can start setting up SQL managed instance on top of it.
Okay.
And number 4 is now you can manage it through centralized control and policy. That's how easy it is. But why don't, instead of me talking through it, let me show you how.
Yeah, you'd be interested to see it. So those 4 steps, I mean, I know how to do Kubernetes, and I know how to connect something to something else. And so I think I can do that. So I probably want to see that location.
Yeah, we also have some viewers that are itching to see this as well.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Awesome.
Well, let's see what you got here.
Awesome. So I'll show you that even if you don't know Kubernetes, it's very easy to do it using the direct connected mode. But if you happen to know Kubernetes, we can switch over and show you some commands that you can run as Kubernetes experts and make sure that even if you don't have connectivity to Azure portal all the time and intermittently it's broken, you can still continue to run your services. That is an important thing. Is that
that's going to be real. I'm going to ask you about that a little later, because what you just said, I don't want to sidetrack you from the installation here, but that's a really important point to us at Contoso Healthcare.
Excellent.
So were you in PowerShell? Is that where you were?
Yeah, I was here right in PowerShell, and you can use all the PowerShell commands.
Okay.
You can also use Azure Shell. You have multiple tools. And I think you bring up a good point there, Buck, which is you can use your existing tools as even Azure Data Studio, which we'll look into later, or Azure Portal or Azure CLI or AZ Data, as well as PowerShell.
Okay.
So you have the full flexibility. You don't need to retool yourself with a new set of tools. But at the same time, it being running on Kubernetes, you can also bring in your open source tools. If you're more familiar with it.
Yeah, we've sort of standardized on PowerShell and the portal, because we have a lot of things in Azure and everything on premises.
Absolutely.
We do everything in PowerShell.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is kind of nice too. Just to add, our users are so used to, SQL and PowerShell and the things that they've been doing for a long time. And I think it's interesting how as we move towards Azure, we kind of move towards, okay, let's bring you the same tools, the same language. It's just SQL. And now it's interesting, almost full circle, as we move back towards on-prem or somewhere else, we're still maintaining that theme of like, it's just SQL, bring your existing skills. And we're taking you with us on this modernization journey. So yeah, let's see the installation. I'd love to see it.
That's a key point. I think you want to keep that same experience and skill set and grow on top of it. So let's create, and so part of it is I have an existing Kubernetes cluster that has been set up, and it was set up as so I'll go into PowerShell and show you a little bit of how it was, whether it's really fully set up or not.
Right.
So the Kubernetes was set up. Either you can set up a single node Kubernetes cluster if you want to do a dev test, but really I would recommend 3 nodes running Linux, or if you're running Azure or if you're running SQL Server, then you also have Arc enabled SQL Server, and you can run it in Windows VM.
Okay.
But I'm going to focus today on Arc enabled data services, which runs in Kubernetes in Linux. Now I've set it up such that there are 3 nodes of Linux nodes running in Kubernetes, and I've set up something called as a custom location. And I'll explain what a custom location is later. But let's make sure that we have custom location listed out. But think of this as exactly what you're asking for. am I running Azure services outside of Azure?
Okay.
And that's where you see I've set up a custom location for the Contoso Factory US, which represents one location outside of Azure, and it starts showing up just as if it's a region in Azure.
Okay.
But in reality, for those of you like you who know Kubernetes, it's a specific namespace.
Okay, so that I was going to say, this is just a namespace then. So I'm just carving out a place. This is part of that handshake between Kubernetes and Azure, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. And there has been connectivity set up so that that namespace can have the connectivity to Azure, so that if there is any identity that needs to flow down to the location for RBAC, or logs and metrics that have to flow up, which we'll look into later.
Okay.
But first,
that's important. All right, good.
Yeah. First, let's set up what we call as an data controller.
Okay.
And data controller is the heart of running data services.
Okay.
It is you can call it an agent which can talk to Azure. Okay. At the same time, it is managing the life cycle of the local data services like SQL Managed Instance, Postgres, and other services that will come in.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's Kubernetes aware and it's Azure aware.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It is the bridge between Kubernetes and Azure.
Okay.
And before I do that, before I set up the data controller, what I have to also do is set up what we call as a Kubernetes extension. And this is the bootstrapping mechanism that now the cluster that I created, the Contoso DC cluster, has the ability to create a data controller.
Okay.
And bootstrap it in such a way that it can start talking to Azure. So step one, I created a cluster.
Got it.
Step two, I created connected it to Azure. Step three, I created a custom location where the data controller can manage those services. And as part of it, I also enabled data extension. Right now, these look as distinct steps. Buck, in the long time, as we work on improving Arc-enabled data services, we are going to unify this whole experience. So you won't have to worry about, did I set up the extension or not?
Got it.
So
Okay. I think I'm tracking so far. I've got my cluster. I've now sort of connected it, and I've added the extension. So now what do we do next?
Next, you want to create an Azure Arc data controller.
Okay.
And that, as I mentioned, is the heart of the system.
Oh, okay.
Now, here's where we come into, you have to make a choice. Do you want to be directly connected or indirect?
Okay, tell me what that means.
Which do you want to pick?
Yeah, which one? What does that mean?
Okay, so direct connected mode is for those customers who are generally having ability to connect to Azure and send down central policy updates, patches on an automated basis. It can still be controlled, but that way you're getting the full benefit of Azure, where you get SQL, evergreen SQL. You don't have to worry about patches and updates and so on. And Azure just takes care of it.
Sure.
Now, some of our customers do have concerns about directly connecting their database endpoints to the internet. They have policies and compliance, data sovereignty rules. And for them, what we allow them to do is set it up in an indirectly connected mode.
I see.
Which means they can independently manage the lifecycle of their data instances, the SQL managed instances, and only send the information over to Azure that is most essential.
I see. So when
for example, billing data,
my metrics
how much is
and
getting
stuff.
used?
Yeah, when I need to get my metrics and stuff, then I can say that now do that. You know, this might be useful because I've got field hospitals. Sometimes our healthcare will respond to a national emergency or floods or hurricanes, and we have to set up a field hospital. And I want to get all my medical systems out to the field, but I may not have internet connectivity. So I could potentially use this there until I have internet connectivity, send everything up, and I get the best of both worlds.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that way you're in compliance, Buck. At the same time, you start getting the essential benefits of connecting to Azure.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Thanks for explaining that.
Yeah. So let's do direct connected mode today.
Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah. So let me connect on direct connected mode. Next, I'm going to give some information to configure this data controller.
Okay.
It automatically populated my subscription and the resource group because that's where we started.
Okay.
Now let's give this data controller a name.
Okay.
And let's say DC Control East Factory 1.
Okay.
Then we want to give, remember I talked to you about the custom location?
Yeah, okay, there it is. Okay,
right?
Got it.
And you could have multiple custom locations. Let's say there are 3 factories in East US. You can create a custom location for each one of them. That tends to give you the rollback, RBAC that you require, role-based access control that you require, so that you can scope those locations and gives your specific developer and your clinic locations or your factory location personnel the access that they absolutely essentially need.
Okay, perfect.
The next thing you want to do is we have pre-configured for you a set of configuration depending on what is the underlying Kubernetes you're running on. Now, I might have said this, or maybe I missed it, is that Arc-enabled data services can run on any CNCF compliant Kubernetes.
Interesting.
Right? But we have actually gone and worked with some partners like OpenShift and made sure that we have configuration that works by default for those platforms of Kubernetes, those flavors of Kubernetes.
Interesting.
You can see these two, EKS and GKE. So those are also the platforms on which you can run your SQL managed instances.
So if I have this right, I could actually get some of the Azure services, but running in a competitor's cloud. Do I have that right?
Absolutely. No questions at all.
Okay, that's very well.
Yeah, but since I work in the Azure data team, I want you to run it on AKS HCI.
Okay. Yeah, my boss is really going to like this though, because then I don't have vendor lock-in. So he'll really like that. And we do have just regular Kubernetes on premises. So that's awesome that those are available. But let's do your AKS one. I'm familiar with the AKS.
Yeah, you can run it on AKS or even, and then you want to, sorry, I selected the wrong. Then you can have different storage classes, but here I'm going to select the default storage classes.
Sure.
If you have complex storage configuration, you can select the right storage that you need. Next, you want to select whether you want to do it with a load balancer or a node port.
Okay.
And then you want to give a login for the data controller.
Okay.
So for the database administrator who is managing all of the life cycle of these SQL managed instances, you want to give a data controller admin. And here I'm going to keep it simple.
So is this similar to your sysadmin, or is this something else?
I would say this is similar to the database admin. In certain small organizations, Anna, the cloud administrator is taking care of both the infrastructure as well as the databases. In some larger organizations, and I might give you a customer example where the local factories or local clinics are managed and their data instances are managed by a database administrator. I'm working with a customer right now who is a large organization worldwide. They're saying, our DB admins don't know much about Kubernetes. Can you deliver database as a service? It's for those customers, not knowing anything about Kubernetes. They just have a set of things to set up, and then they give the username, password, and then they can log into it. The next thing we need is called as a service principal, and the service principal is needed if you are going to centrally monitor and set up logs, as well as monitor with Azure metrics. So I'm just going to fill in some values here. These are not real values. But what you would do is go into Azure, create a service principal,
I see.
and use the client ID, the password, which is the secret, and the tenant ID.
Okay.
And once you've done that, any of the data that is being created, any of the logs, any of the metrics is automatically pumped into Azure Monitor.
I see.
You've
Okay.
done
That's
all
good.
the plumbing in the back end so that you don't have to learn new technologies. Here as a database admin, you come in and you've suddenly delivered database as a service in the cloud. That's
Awesome.
centrally managed. There are some additional settings, especially if you want to use the metrics and logging, log analytics. You can talk to your infrastructure administrator and get your log analytics workspace or primary key, and then set up the tags if you want to do tags.
Yep.
And then the next step is going to be create. But create is going to take a lot more time, so I'm going to not do this. It takes about, not a lot more, as in 5 or 6 minutes.
Okay.
And this can get set up. But let's go back to understanding. I've already set up a data controller here.
Okay.
And you can see that. And this, as it gets reflected, you can use this data controller, connect to it even using Azure Data Studio, and start creating new SQL managed instances with it, which is what I've done here. So do you want to know how to create a SQL managed instance now that a data controller
if you,
created?
if you've got time just to show it, you don't have to run, actually do it, but if you can show me how hard that is, because that was fairly straightforward. It's like 2 panels of information and you're done. So that's not so bad. So you just type Arc SQL.
Let's see what comes up. So this will bring in 2 things. One is Buck, if your clinics have existing SQL running in VMs, and this is an important point, is that we not only manage your virtualized environments, which may be running on any virtualization layer, which is SQL, but we can also create, if you're a cloud native and you're going towards microservices-based applications and using Kubernetes, we can use Azure SQL Managed Instance, which is what we're diving into today.
Yeah, this is amazing because I like managed instance a lot, but I wanted it locally. And you're telling me I can do that now. Absolutely. Now that's the whole thing. That's very impressive. I'm going to test you on that in a minute. Go ahead and run through this, but I have a question. I have to see to believe here in just a moment.
Okay, certainly. So here's how you do it, Buck. Again, because I started with the resource group, all of that is filled in.
Right.
Let's give the instance a name.
Right.
Contoso SQL MI Arc. Oh, I'll just
that's fine. Yep.
Yeah.
And then
now remember the custom location.
Yeah.
We have that. Service type, load balancer.
Right. And then I can
and now compute and storage. This is the default.
Yeah.
But I wanted to show you one thing over here.
Okay.
Some of our factory locations, maybe not as much clinics, but factory locations wanted to have high availability, even if the location gets disconnected from Azure. So if there is a failure, the backups and recovery, restore can happen locally. And so if I need high availability, I can select 3 replicas over here.
I see.
So it makes it really simple for me to create a highly available SQL managed instance. And then I want to give some username password.
Okay.
And let's do this. And then I can do a review and create.
Nice.
Right?
Okay, so very straightforward again. I like the fact that I can choose the replicas. Manufacturing does have those high availability requirements, but we have certain databases that control the oxygen machines and some of the electronics, and they're critical. So I also need this high availability as well.
Excellent. And as I'm not going to create it now because it does take a few minutes.
Right.
But I've already created, if you look at Contoso Factory US,
Uh-huh.
I've already created a SQL managed instance, anticipating that you might need some tips to make it real, right? So let's go log back to the PowerShell window that we have.
Okay.
And let's see if it is really running, or am I having a fake service? And this will be the proof point you were looking for. So I'm giving a PowerShell commandlet that says, get me the SQL managed instance called Contoso SQL 1.
Okay.
And the namespace is Azure Arc.
Okay.
In which, there you go, it's running.
Okay.
Wow.
And it's even on port 1433. I'm used to that.
Yep. And if you were to do this, if you were to do the create, I usually see this command to see is it ready or is it not ready? Is it spinning up?
Yeah, it's pretty typical.
And you can also go into understanding, if you're a Kubernetes geek, then you can even get detailed description about that particular pod. So there is a pod in Kubernetes that is actually running this.
Yeah.
And so that if the pod fails, Kubernetes takes care of high availability and spins up a new SQL managed instance. And
that's one of the advantages of Kubernetes. If something fails, it just puts it back.
Exactly. So that's how easy it is to set it up. Don't you agree?
That sounds pretty impressive. I'm impressed with the fact that it's just a few panels, or I could do it all in PowerShell. But what do I get because I've done that? Let me tell you why I'm asking. I told you I was going to call you out about that managed instance. I know in managed instance, I get like central billing, I get monitoring, I get security, like threat analysis, I get all of that stuff. Do I have that in this, or is it not really that?
Absolutely. You get all of this. And I've not set it up for the factory yet. I'm still working on it. But one of my friends, Tolga, has already set up another environment, a demo environment, to show our customers how this works. And he has a SQL managed instance, Azure Arc. This is the instance running in Azure Arc.
Right.
You can drill down into this instance and go into alerts, metrics, logs, all the gory details if you want to. If you're a database admin, once I go into metrics, I have the ability to select all the standard metrics, CPU usage, and I can change it over the last 24 hours or last 30 minutes. So all of the metrics that is happening on premises is now available for you centrally through Azure Arc. And as we do this,
that's combined with my other metrics, right? Like I can see now my entire data estate, both on premises, over in another cloud, or in Azure, or all at once in the same place.
All at once. And all these metrics can then be used into getting more insights about how your databases are running, getting centralized billing, getting centralized policy, doing threat analytics. All of those services that are available to you in Azure are now applying.
Yeah, we use the threat analytics a lot for everything we have up in Azure, because as you know, being a medical company, we get audited a lot. And so what I do right now is I just go to Azure, I get my security threat analysis, I print it out. It's got all the certifications that I meet or don't meet, all the mitigations I need to do, and I just hand that to my auditor, and that satisfies that particular requirement. So it's really, really important that I get this. And so I'm impressed. I'm really impressed. Now, let me say this, though. This is all great, and I love clicking through things one at a time. That's awesome. But I've got 400 and I think 32 at last count, small locations for Contoso Health. A lot of the little strip mall, home health, oxygen, things like that. I've got them all over the place. Is there a way to sort of do this more declaratively or scripted or something like that? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, for that volume, Buck, I'm not going to expect you to go to the Azure portal and click
430 times.
430 by the number of clicks you saw today, right? That would be too much waste of your time. You should be off doing something more fun. And so rather than showing you what I have set up, I want to tell you about one of the customers we worked with, SKF.
Okay.
The SKF is a global leader in ball bearing and lubricants that are supplied globally. They have 109 factories. They wanted to modernize their factories, make sure that the factories are data-driven, and collecting data from all the factory machinery, all the IoT devices in the machinery, to analyze how their factory floor is working most efficiently and getting the most out of it. And for doing that analytics, not only did they need centralized control and centralized policy and ability to manage, because they could not have an infrastructure expert in every factory that can manage the cluster. But they also wanted autonomy in certain factory locations, which are not highly connected all the time, and they may be intermittently connected. But they wanted the high availability, they wanted local processing, low latency. So they adopted Azure Hybrid with Azure Azure AKS HCI and Azure Arc Data Services, as well as Azure Data Studio and all the good tools that come with it. Modernizing their applications, which they're going to deploy on the factory floors and control the factory line over there. So let me show you, rather than me talking to you, I've had my friends there in SKF create a demo video, a video of their actual application, not a demo.
All right.
And I'm going to show you. Now, what this will show you is that they've used Azure Data Studio to connect to their data controllers that we just created in a remote factory location in Italy. From there, you're going to view the SQL managed instance running in there. And they're going to change, the compute capacity on each one of them, so that as their business increases, as those factories are becoming more and more productive, they can use the elasticity with a simple declarative way of doing it. And not only are they using tools that they're familiar with, which is Azure and Kubernetes, they're also using an open source tool called Argo CD. So let's look at
Argo CD. That's like CI/CD control, right?
Correct.
GitHub and Git repos.
Exactly. So we go into Azure Data Studio and we connect to the Italy factory and look at the compute limits that have been set there. And it's set to 1 right now. Then we switch over to their local Argo CD, which shows you that the application that is running in that factory with all the pods. And here's the config that they're using. We'll go down there and we'll change the CPU request from 1 to 2. Centrally from their location in Sweden. And we're going to push this, and this is connected to a Git repo. So this declaration change that has been made will update the Git repo. As we refresh Argo CD, which is connected to the Git repo, it's constantly monitoring the live manifest and comparing it under the desired manifest. And now you see 1 has changed to 2. So Argo CD has automatically detected that this is out of sync from the desired configuration. Here we manually apply it, but you can set it to complete auto policy. So Argo CD has connected to the Git repo, detected that there is a config change that was applied centrally from their Swedish factory, made sure that gets communicated to the Kubernetes cluster that's running in the Italy factory. And right now that Kubernetes cluster is getting applied that change, the configuration change, and Kubernetes reads that change and says, oh, I need more pods running because there's more capacity that's needed to run this particular application or this particular SQL managed instance. And as that is happening, you can actually monitor what's happening in the Italy factory using Arc CD, using Azure Portal, and make sure that the changes do get applied. So
That's
right
cool.
now they're getting synced.
Right.
It takes literally a few minutes
Yeah.
for the sync to happen. But does
Yeah.
that give you a good sense of how it's
You know,
happening? And
it
we'll
really-
go back to Azure Data Studio to make sure that it has actually happened.
Well, that really does. And so if I'm tracking all this right, because this is a lot to take in, Anna, I mean, I don't know, are you tracking all this? I mean, it's like I've got Kubernetes on premises, but I'm looking at it and controlling it from Azure. And then I want to make a change. So at headquarters, I make a change in a GitHub repo, and then it automatically pulls from that, automatically updates everything to the new configuration and tracks all that and monitors it and secures it. I mean, that's just, that's a lot. That's a lot happening. And I like the way that, like, I can have a single seat and start sort of tracking all this. And there it is. It's at 2. Look at that.
It's at 2. All done centrally.
Nicely done. Yeah, this is very impressive. So, Anna, again, apologize for crashing your show here, but I think you're really answering these questions for me. I'm kind of interested in sort of getting started. So I don't know, DJ, are you the right person to talk to about like learning things and getting sort of starting with this thing? Or Anna, maybe do you know somebody else?
Yeah, we probably have someone that we could bring on to talk to you. You know, give us one moment, Buck.
Yeah.
You know, Dhananjay, I can't thank you enough for coming on such short notice and showing him all this. I think it's been really valuable. You think we could bring in Lior? You think Lior would be able to show him
Lior.
how to get started?
Absolutely. All right. Lior has the best tools.
Hey, Lior.
Hey.
You know, we have this customer kind of on the other line, and he wants to learn more about how to get started with Azure Arc. He's not really sure where to start. Dhananjay showed him a bunch of awesome stuff about how it works. He's kind of sold, and I think a lot of our viewers watching are sold too. Can you, before we bring you in with Buck, can you tell us a little bit about what you do and why you might be the right person for this job?
Yeah, of course, Anna. Thanks for calling me. I was waiting for your call. It's been a while. So my name is Lior Kamrat, and I'm an architect as part of our Global Solutions Partners division. My job is basically to help our Microsoft partners to be successful with hybrid cloud and specifically with Azure Arc. So this is what I'm spending probably 150% of my time these days. So that's what I do.
150%. That's what you can do in this remote world.
Right.
Just dedicate more time than you have. Right. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Lior. I think you're going to be perfect to talk to Buck. We're going to bring him on. He has some questions. Maybe you can show him some stuff. All right. Hey, Buck. We've got someone for you. We've got Lior. I think he's the perfect guy to tell you how to get started.
Well, fantastic. Well, hello, Lior. Good to meet you. I don't know if they told you about us, but I'm from Contoso Healthcare Services. And so I've been talking with DJ there a little bit about how, managed instance is kind of what we're kind of settled on. We really like that offering. I really like all of the things he showed, and that's great. But I probably, I didn't memorize everything he said. So I was wondering if there's a place where I can go to learn more. I know I can just go read tons of documentation, but is there a better way to kind of onboard a little quicker?
Yeah, that's a perfect question, Buck. And I'm sure DJ showed you some awesome stuff. So, we created for Azure Arc this project. We called that project Azure Arc Jumpstart. And this project is basically, its sole purpose is to take you by the hand with everything that is Azure Arc related and make sure that you will not fail doing this, right? So everything DJ showed you, what we did is basically automated a lot of that and created what we called scenarios. So these scenarios are basically automated deployment methods for you to get going with Azure Arc. And we have everything got covered, right? All the way from Azure Arc enabled servers to Kubernetes, and I know that you're interested in data services and SQL Server, so you got you covered there as well. Definitely. Do you want me to show you some stuff?
Yeah, that'd be great. Now, just so I'm clear, does this cost anything? Can the rest of my team? Because I'm not going to be doing it. I'm a manager. I have other people that do it. Is this going to is this going to, like, can I give it to them as well? Or is this something specific where I have to sign up?
This is an open source project, Buck. It's out for grabs. You can use it however you want, whenever you want. Heck, we will even like for you to contribute if you have the time.
Excellent. Sounds good. All right. Well, let's take a look.
All right. Let me show you this. So you can see here that I'm in the Azure Arc Jumpstart webpage, right? And in the Azure Arc Jumpstart webpage, what you want to do is go into the left pane, and we have what we call Jumpstart scenarios. Like I mentioned, we are covering everything that is Azure Arc, right? So I know you guys talked about what? SQL? That's what you care about?
Yeah, it was the Azure Arc enabled data service.
Data exposed,
Yeah.
Lior.
Yeah, SQL.
Yeah, I mean, data is a big thing. I mean, I was just wondering. I mean, Buck seems like a SQL guy, so, let's just get going. So listen, Buck, so we have this Azure Arc enabled data services section here, right? And you can see here that we have all these Kubernetes platforms and flavors that we support inside the Jumpstart. So did DJ talk to you about the fact that you can actually deploy on every CNCF Kubernetes flavor?
He did. Now, we have on-premises Kubernetes, but we're also familiar with the AKS service there in Azure. So we have both of those. Yeah, so we got you covered. You can see here that I have all these Kubernetes flavors in the Jumpstart project, right? And what you can do, you can go into each flavor that you want. So let's say that you want to simulate an on-premises deployment, right? You don't want to do something that is, on AKS or, for some reason, but you want to really simulate your environment. So the closest that I can show you is Kubernetes Cluster API. So if you're not familiar with Kubernetes Cluster API, it's basically an unmanaged Kubernetes cluster that you can deploy in Azure, right? So if AKS is our managed offering, Cluster API is basically a way to deploy Kubernetes cluster in a declarative way, but in an unmanaged fashion, right? So what you see here is 3 scenarios. We have what we call the vanilla scenario. That scenario will show you how to just deploy the data controller, okay? And from that point, you can do whatever you want. The second scenario will show you how to do SQL managed instance. And the third scenario will show you Postgres. Let me go into the SQL managed instance because I know that this is what you care about. Right. So in this scenario, what you can see is we have this nice document for you that will take you by the hand and will show you all the prerequisites, everything that you need to see or do before you're actually going by and deploy this thing. Now, the nice thing about these scenarios is that it's not just, documentations that will explain to you the commands. We'll also give you the context, we'll give you the background, why we're doing things the way we do. We are connecting that into the architecture discussions that you may have, right? So everything that you need to have in order to get going with Azure Arc, right? So we're showing you the automation flow, how does that going to work? But eventually, right, at the end of the day, all you need to do is just to deploy a command, right? Or execute a command. And that's all you need to do. And eventually, as you can see in the screenshots here in the scenario, you will get everything deployed for you, right? Very nice. So these are the PowerShell scripts, and eventually you will get a single client machine with all the tools that you need in order to get going with Azure Arc enabled data services. Does that make sense? Do you think that's something that will help you? It really does. And I like it's almost a classroom experience. And so I can have my technical professionals perhaps maybe even get together and work through some of these as a group and learn how to do this. And then they can let me know, hey, this looks like something we want to do, solves our problems. And we can even try a few scenarios out. And I definitely am interested in that security side. So I want to look at that and all the rest. So this would be great. Yeah, this looks awesome. Yeah. So, let me take it one step further. I mean, if you like the scenario, you will really love what I have to show you right now. Okay. So, all these scenarios that, I was talking about, what we did is we created what we called an opinionated sandbox. We called it ArcBox. Now, ArcBox, yes, ArcBox. So ArcBox is basically a single resource group that you will deploy in a single command, which will deploy all the Azure Arc enabled services that you can think of in a single place, right? And eventually you will get the same client machine, everything that you need in order to get going with Azure Arc. So let me show you this right now. So first of all, in the Azure Arc Jumpstart, you can see here that we have a dedicated page. Jumpstart We will show you the architecture, what is it that we're deploying, the use cases, all the capability, and everything that you need to know. Wow. So let's do a live demo here. Okay. I'll show you the resource group, right? So I have 2 resource groups. I have one that is a vanilla resource group, and I have one that I already
configured and everything. Arcbox is already running. So I want to show you both so you can get an idea of the experience, okay? So when you're deploying Arcbox, you're basically deploying that from the Azure portal. Okay. Now, what you will get is you will get a resource group. Now, you have two parts to Arcbox deployment. The first part is the Azure part, right? This is where all the Azure resources will get deployed, right? Your virtual machines, networks, security groups, etc. The second part is when we're going to RDP to a client machine. Now, that client machine will basically show you, that client machine will basically start a deployment of all the Arc services that are included in Arcbox. So let's go ahead, RDP to that machine, and I will show you live how the experience looks like when you're logging into a machine for the first time. Okay. So you can see here that I have Arcbox in East US. Okay. And inside Arcbox, if I scroll all the way down to virtual machines, you can see that I have Arcbox client.
I see.
Now, yeah. So that Arcbox client is the machine that's basically where you are doing all your management tasks for Arc. Now, I'm going to use that public IP and log into that machine. Now, for the viewers, you will not be able to use that public IP because we're also creating a security group that will map your public IP into that network security group. So it also secured in that way. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll open
I get, just so I understand here, I don't have to install anything locally to use this. I just hit Azure, it stands everything up, and I even get the client environment. Now, someday I will install all these tools locally, but for now I can simply use the contained environment. And because it's all in one resource group, I know when we stand up things at Contoso in resource groups, we can delete the resource group and it deletes everything in it. So that's really handy when we're just trying things out for test and development.
That's exactly right, Buck. You got it the nail on his head, right? Because we don't want you to mess up with your own production environment. So that's why we're creating this isolated sandbox, right? So what I will do, I will log into that machine, and that's the first time I'm logging into that machine.
Okay.
Because Anna, she tends to call me, and I always ready, right? So I wanted to show you this. So let's do that. So I'm going to log into that machine. I'll type in my password.
Okay.
And you can see that I got the certificate. So that shows you that the first time I'm actually logging in. Let's see what happens, right? Now, I'll bring in my other screen here, and you can see that here it's logging into Windows. Let's try to fix that resolution here, right? All right. So you can see that that machine basically started a couple of partial scripts, right?
Interesting.
We're not going to wait. We're not going to wait for everything to kick off, right? Because that will take some time. Because we're deploying the data controller, we're deploying SQL managed instance, Postgres, Arc-enabled servers, Kubernetes, like we're doing all that stuff for you. So, you might want to grab some coffee and come back after probably around 20 minutes, and you will have this environment up and running. So that's what you will see, and that's the client machine. So you're going to have Azure Data Studio in that, everything. Do you want to see that environment?
Already
deployed?
Yeah, let's see what it looks like when it's done.
Let's do that, Bob. Let's do that. So, I always like to get calls and talking to clients and customers like yourself. And like I said, Anna, she knows who to call. So that's why I got this environment already up and running. So let's do this, Buck. So you can see here, right? Let's do a quick comparison. I'll go to the previous resource group. You can see that in this previous group, resource group, I have 42 Azure resources. But here, I have 74 Azure resources. And you know what the difference? The difference is that environment already have all the Arc resources. So let's do a quick filtering here, right? I'll click the data controller. We'll choose all the Arc resources, right? We have the custom location. Here's Kubernetes, right? Let's go and do server and also SQL managed instance.
Okay.
And sorry about that, Buck. I just clicked my start button. They told me that they're going to move it to the right, and they never did. And, so let's just do that.
Okay.
So I'll show an example. Here's the data controller, and let's apply that.
Okay.
Now, here you can see all the Arc-enabled resources that we deployed as part of Arcbox. Okay.
Nice.
Now, you have all that resources. In addition, I'll show you how a client machine looks like after the deployment is done. So this is the client machine with the automation already enabled. Now, guess what? Because, you're a SQL fan like myself, we also deploy in the Data Studio, so you can actually get going with SQL as well, right?
Awesome.
So here's Data Studio, and what we're doing for you, we're already configuring those connections to the SQL instance and the Postgres instance. We're putting that inside the configuration for Data Studio. And as an extra flavor, extra touch there, we're also restoring the AdventureWorks database that you're familiar with. Just as an example, so you will also have a database to play around with when you have the ArcBox environment deployed. So that's really what we have for you to start getting your hands dirty with Azure Arc. Does that make sense?
This has just been awesome. I don't know if DJ is still on the line, Anna, but I'd like you to bring him back if you don't mind. I really want to thank you all for this, and I mean, wow, so much information. Are these? Did you record our call? I forgot to ask if you would record this call because I want to show my team.
Yes, we've actually live streamed this whole call. So, thanks, Buck. You really brought to light a lot of questions that I think a lot of customers are having, and really hope that between some excellent explanations and resources from Dhananjay and Lior, you're able to get started, and our viewers are able to get started. As we think about closing out, I would just love to ask Lior, Dhananjay, like, what are some tips or what's one piece of advice you have for folks that are just getting started?
Lior, you want to go with it?
Do it.
Okay, so one piece of advice that I would use is this is the time to transition to the cloud. Azure Arc, with Azure Arc enabled data services, is going to start a new transition, just as I showed you with SKF. So it's time to embrace the technology which is helping you solve those problems to go to cloud native applications. We have a ton of information. I think Lior gave through the Jumpstart, which is an awesome place to start. And we also have a lot of information on Learn. Lior, do you want to add anything to it?
Yeah, documentation sometimes can be intimidating for some people. And what we want is for you to not be in that situation. So please go ahead, take a look at the Jumpstart, start getting your hands dirty. It's really easy to get, to get going with Azure Arc. And once you see those resources projected inside Azure, I think everything is starting to click and you will have those light bulb moments. So definitely go and do that.
Yeah, I will definitely be passing this on to my team. Just before we go, Anna, if you don't mind just putting in the chat there for me, Maurice's phone number, because I have a bunch more questions about other products, and I'd love to talk to her about maybe talking to you again sometime whenever I have a question.
Yeah, we are not going to do that, but thank you so much, Buck. What a great idea. We are glad that you somehow made your way on here. We did get a comment saying, people have heard a lot about your company. I don't know if it's good or bad or it doesn't even exist.
Great place to work.
Some rumors out there on the internet, but glad you found your way on the show. This was a great show. I personally learned a lot. I think our viewers learned a lot. Thank you so much, Buck, for coming on, and thank you so much to Dhananjay and Lior. We hope you'll go check out some of those resources. We will put them in the show notes with the description for this video. With that, I want to thank our viewers so much for joining us this week on Data Exposed Live. We'll be back next week, and thanks for joining us. We hope to see you next time.